Estás entrando en Crónicas de la Oscuridad. En este reino nocturno, las sombras escriben historias prohibidas, relatos tan perturbadores que desafían toda lógica. Cada crónica es un viaje sin retorno hacia lo más profundo y oscuro del alma humana, donde los miedos más íntimos cobran vida y se materializan en terrores indescriptibles. El silencio aquí no es aliado, sino cómplice, susurrando secretos que ningún mortal debería escuchar jamás. Permanece atento, pues las historias que escucharás quedarán tatuadas en tu memoria y acecharán tus sueños durante mucho tiempo después. That inaugural night, when the faint, dry skittering echoed from the rafters, I dismissed it. Old timbers sighing, perhaps. The house settling into its bones. By the third night, however, certainty coiled cold in my gut. Something deeply aberrant resided above. What awaited me in that suffocating dust-choked loft would unravel my world, fraying the very edges of perceived reality, leaving me stranded on the precipice between the known and the abyss. The opportunity to inhabit my Aunt Clara and Uncle Arthur's sprawling Victorian while they traversed Europe for a month had felt like a reprieve. Their home, a gaunt sentinel perched on the town's fringe amidst skeletal oaks, casting spectral fingers across neglected lawns, was an architectural universe away from my own constricted apartment. I craved the solitude, the echoing quietude supposedly conducive to wrestling my novel into existence. Yet, from the instant I crossed the threshold, unease permeated the air, stagnant, thick with the cloying perfume of moth-eaten textiles and decaying paper. Ascending the groaning staircase, suitcase thudding against each riser, the distinct sensation of unseen eyes prickled my neck. Nerves, I assured myself, the disorientation of unfamiliar space. 2 days drifted by in deceptive calm. A rhythm established itself. Mornings devoted to the blank page, afternoons to wandering the house's shadowed corridors and the overgrown tangle of the grounds. Then came the third night, shattering the peace. A sound tore me from sleep, a delicate scratching directly overhead, like tiny claws worrying at old wood. Disoriented, adrift in pre-dawn blackness, I squinted at the clock face, 3:17 a.m. The witching hour, my sleep-addled brain unhelpfully whispered. Nothing. I breathed into the oppressive silence, drawing the duvet tighter. A squirrel, maybe. A lost bird. But lying rigid, senses straining, the scratching intensified, grew insistent. It lacked the chaotic scramble of any animal I knew. A disturbing cadence pulsed within it, deliberate, almost interrogatory, as if the source craved acknowledgement. Sleep became an impossibility thereafter. I thrashed in the sheets, my imagination painting horrors on the canvas of the dark. Dawn found me frayed, caffeine-wired, flinching at every sigh and settlement of the ancient structure. The day was consumed by a frantic delve into the property's lineage, seeking some historical anchor, some documented tragedy or peculiarity to explain the nocturnal disturbance. Yet, beyond its considerable age, the house yielded no secrets, no gruesome legends, no whispered scandals, merely the unremarkable chronicle of a family home passed down through quiet generations. Twilight descended, and with it a familiar dread pooled heavy and cold in my stomach. Television offered a flickering, inadequate shield, but the scratching returned, earlier this time, louder. It burrowed under my skin, an undeniable presence lurking just beyond the plaster ceiling. Waiting, investigation was no longer a choice, but a compulsion. Access to the attic lay concealed behind a trapdoor panel set flush into the upper hallway ceiling. With hands that betrayed my fear, I fumbled with the cord, lowering the articulated ladder. My flashlight beam sliced into the waiting dark, illuminating a cavern choked with spectral shapes, furniture draped in shrouds of dust, leaning stacks of forgotten cartons, gossamer veils of cobweb stretched between rafters like macabre decorations. The air hung thick, tasting of disuse and time's slow decay. A deep breath, then a scent, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat surely audible to whatever shared this forgotten space. Initially, the scene presented only the expected detritus of accumulated years, standard attic fare. But as the cone of light swept across the gloom, it snagged on an anomaly. A metallic gleam partially obscured by a pyramid of cardboard boxes. Navigating the cluttered floor carefully, I shifted the boxes aside. There, nestled incongruously into the far wall, was a door. Small, intricately carved, fashioned from dark wood, its brass handle dulled by time and neglect. It radiated an aura of profound wrongness. A fairy tale portal inexplicably embedded in suburban architecture. Hesitantly, I reached out. The instant my fingertips grazed the cool metal of the handle, the scratching erupted anew, sharp and frantic, emanating directly from behind the impossible door. My hand recoiled as if burned, my heart vaulting into my throat. This defied logic. The house's external structure offered no space for such a room. Yet, overriding every instinct screaming for retreat, I gripped the handle, twisted. With a low protesting groan, the door swung inward, revealing not a room, but a darkness absolute, a void that seemed to drink the beam of my flashlight. The scratching ceased, replaced by a silence more profound, more terrifying. Leaning forward, attempting to pierce the impenetrable gloom beyond the threshold, I felt it, a breath, impossibly cold, against my face. It carried a scent both ancient and sickeningly sweet, like grave dirt mingled with cloying, rotten blossoms. "Hello?" My voice was a mere thread of sound. "Is anyone there?" The answer arrived not in language, but as a sudden, violent surge of wind from the doorway, extinguishing my light, throwing me off balance. I stumbled back, scrabbling away from the opening. But awareness came too late. Something had registered my presence. Something stirred. A sound preceded vision, a wet, rustling susurration, a slithering that raised the hairs on my arms. And then, pouring from the absolute black, they emerged. Dozens. Undulating silhouettes, humanoid in rough outline but distorted in ways that defied articulation, possessed of a wrong geometry. They flowed from the portal like sentient smoke, their movements unnerving, fluid, untethered to physical law. A scream lodged itself in my throat. Useless. Flight was impossible. Terror pinned me, a paralysis deeper than any fear previously known. The shapes coalesced around me, their featureless expanses somehow radiating a palpable, soul-deep hunger. One figure extended a limb, the arm stretching, attenuating impossibly. Fingers, colder than ice, brushed my cheek. The contact sent a jolt, an electric shock through my entire being. In that fleeting touch, understanding flooded me. Visions of other planes. Realities stacked like brittle, translucent sheets upon our own. And in the interstitial spaces, these entities watched, perpetually waiting, there scratching the sound of claws testing the fragile membranes between dimensions. The influx shattered my coherence, my consciousness fragmenting under the weight of forbidden knowledge. Just as oblivion beckoned, a jarring sound sliced through the pandemonium. My mobile phone ringing insistently from the bedroom below. The spell fractured. I gasped, dragging air into starved lungs. The shadow things recoiled, flowing back towards the yawning portal. I didn't linger. I scrambled down the ladder, practically falling the last few feet, and slammed the trapdoor shut, the click of the latch echoing unnervingly loud. Stumbling into my room, I snatched the phone, Aunt Clara's name glowing on the screen. Hands trembling violently, I answered. "Silas? Darling, are you quite all right?" Her voice, warm and familiar, was laced with an unusual urgency. I just had the most peculiar feeling that something wasn't right. My mouth opened, the truth poised on my tongue, but the words refused to form. How could such an experience be translated? Who would grant it credence? I'm fine, Aunt Clara, I managed, my voice a ragged croak. Just a nightmare, I think. A vivid one. We spoke for a few minutes. The mundane rhythm of her conversation a temporary anchor in the storm-tossed sea of my mind. Yet, even as we talked, a fundamental shift resonated within me. The world felt altered, its shadows imbued with depth, the very air charged with unseen potential. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of the bed, the encounter replaying in fractured shards. A primal urge screamed to pack, to flee this house and its impossible secret. But beneath the terror, a darker, more insidious seed had taken root. Curiosity. What were those beings? From whence did they spill? And why this house, this unassuming vessel on the edge of nowhere? The remainder of the night became a descent into the arcane corners of the internet, trawling obscure forums and esoteric websites dedicated to the liminal and the unexplained. What I uncovered both horrified and captivated me. Whispers echoed my experience. Others spoke of impossible doors, of shadows that moved with chilling intent. As dawn painted the sky in bruised colors, a resolution solidified. Departure was unthinkable, not yet. Too many questions remained unanswered, the lure of the unknown too potent. I would stay, for now. I would seek to comprehend the truth concealed behind that attic door. But not unprotected. The day was spent assembling a desperate, eclectic arsenal. Circles of salt, iron shavings, protective sigils drawn from a half-dozen disparate faiths. I possessed no certainty of their efficacy, but inaction felt like surrender. Night fell once more, and with the darkness returned the familiar, insistent scratching from above. This time, however, I was prepared. Or so I believed. Climbing the ladder towards the attic's maw, makeshift talismans clutched tight, I braced myself. Yet no amount of preparation could have girded me for the reality that awaited. The small, ornate door stood agape, and something was emerging. This, then, is where the chronicle truly commences. The narrative of my entanglement in a silent war waged across reality's fragile borders, of the strange allies found and the terrifying adversaries confronted. It is a tale of cosmic dread and unforeseen resilience, charting the treacherous path along the knife edge separating sanity from the abyss. Above all, consider it a caution to any who might discover doorways where none should logically exist, who hear that inexplicable scrabbling in the lonely hours. Tread carefully around what you unlock. Be wary of what you invite across the threshold, because once the veil is rent, retreat becomes impossible. The scratching in the attic is merely the overture. The highway's hypnotic drone had woven itself into the fabric of my exhaustion, miles dissolving under wheel across the darkened canvas of state lines. Hours bled together since twilight faded, leaving only the rhythmic sweep of headlamps on asphalt ribbon. It was the small hours, that deep pocket of night when the world feels held in suspension, and my body screamed for reprieve, a simple pause to unkink limbs knotted by the drive. Not the garish buzz of a service station, nor the communal anonymity of a designated rest stop. I craved solitude. Then a sign, spectral in the high beams, a modest turnoff, promising quietude. It seemed sufficient. Forsaken. That was the word settling upon the place as I idled into the vast emptiness. Skeletal lamps dripped pools of sickly yellow onto cracked pavement, islands in an ocean of profound shadow. Row upon vacant row of parking slots stretched away like neglected graves. I chose a berth beneath one feeble light, a moth drawn to a dying flame, killed the engine and stepped out. The silence rushed in, thick and absolute, broken only by the metallic clack of my car door echoing unnaturally. My spine groaned in relief as I stretched skyward, the air biting, a damp, bone-deep chill that clung like a shroud. Scarcely a minute had passed, the cold just beginning its invasive work, when my gaze snagged on her. A figure poised perfectly at the demarcation between the weak lamplight and the absolute dark. Motionless, shrouded, her features lost within the cowl of some dark garment, save for the glint of eyes, obsidian chips fixed unerringly upon me. They didn't blink. "Are you all right? Need any assistance?" The words felt clumsy, loud in the stillness, my voice striving for a steadiness I didn't possess. No reply, not a twitch, not a shift of weight. She simply was. An effigy of silent observation at the edge of perception. A tremor unrelated to the cold traced its way up my spine. Logic whispered scenarios. Stranded traveler, someone awaiting a ride. But the sheer inertia of her presence, the void where reaction should have been, coiled uneasily in my gut. Hesitantly, I ventured a step nearer, thinking proximity might coax a response. But as my foot scuffed the pavement, she retreated. Not a step, precisely. More a fluid withdrawal into the umbra, dissolving like smoke. One moment there, the next swallowed whole by the night. Vanished. I stood rooted, a debate raging internally. Investigate, offer aid. Yet a primal klaxon screamed, wrongness, an intuition colder than the air. Minutes stretched, taut and silent. Retreat felt wisest. As my fingers brushed the cold metal of the door handle, a sound threaded the silence, fragile, nearly lost. "Help me!" My hand froze inches from the handle. The plea, a mere skein of sound, emanated from the darkness that had claimed her. Turning, I strained my eyes against the impenetrable black beyond the light's frail perimeter. Nothing. Just formless shadow stretching into oblivion. "Hello?" My voice, thinner now, seemed absorbed by the gloom. "Is everything okay?" Only the low electric hum of the lamps answered. A fracture opened within me, the urge to flee warring with the hook of that faint, desperate sound. Reason urged departure. Self-preservation screamed it, but the ghost of that voice, it had found purchase. One step toward the shadows, then another. Tentative explorations into the unknown. "Can I help you?" The question emerged barely louder than my own breathing, and then impossibly she stood before me again, materializing from nothingness just yards away. No footfall, no rustle of cloth. She simply occupied the space anew. Her face, now visible in the sallow light, possessed a lunar pallor nearly translucent, her eyes vast, dark hollows that seemed to drink the light. They fixed on me with an intensity that raised the hairs on my arms. "Help me," she breathed again, the sound incongruously soft, almost juvenile. I recoiled, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. "Are you lost? Should I call someone?" Silence was her only answer. Her gaze remained locked, unwavering, her mouth forming a small dark O. The sepulchral chill intensified, radiating not just from the air, but seemingly from her very presence. My hands began to shake. She projected an aura of profound need, yet something ancient and predatory flickered deep within those cavernous eyes, a silent warning to maintain distance. "I have a phone," I stammered, the words catching. "Is there someone—" Her gaze flickered, a momentary break in its intensity, before she executed a slow, almost mechanical shake of her head. But her eyes, they never left mine. "Take me," she whispered, the words barely audible, carried on a breath that shouldn't exist. "Take you. Where?" My voice was a ragged edge. No answer came. Instead, a hand emerged from the shroud, drifting towards me. Fingers, pale and impossibly thin, trembled slightly. The skin stretched like old parchment over knotted knuckles. Skeletal. Instinct shrieked, a primal command to turn and run. Yet I was pinioned by her stare, frozen like prey. She drifted closer, that desiccated hand still extended, an offering or a threat. Cold sweat beaded on my neck, my muscles locked in terrified paralysis. Her gaze intensified, plunging deeper as if excavating secrets I myself hadn't unearthed. Then, abruptly as it began, the tension broke. She halted. The hand fell slackly to her side. Her shrouded head dipped, shoulders slumping in what might have been resignation, or perhaps something else entirely. With a final, lingering look that felt like a physical touch, she retreated once more, melting back into the waiting darkness, leaving only the echo of her presence. I stood, gasping, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, the encounter replaying in fractured, unbelievable shards. Who? What? The questions were meaningless against the overwhelming imperative. Leave now. I spun towards the car, hand scrabbling frantically for the door. Just as my fingers closed around the handle, I felt it. An icy imprint on my shoulder, cold, damp, and undeniably real. My heart seized, breath snagged painfully in my throat. "Don't leave," rasped a voice directly beside my ear, a breath like grave damp air ghosting against my skin. I whirled around, propelled by sheer terror, confronting nothing. Only the desolate expanse of the lot, the unsteady flicker of the lamps and the shadows, deep and patient. There was no second thought. I flung myself into the driver's seat, slamming the door, the lock clicking with desperate finality. My hands, slick with sweat, trembled violently as they clamped onto the steering wheel. A frantic scan of the surrounding dark revealed only emptiness. Gone. The engine roared to life, a sound tearing through the oppressive quiet. Tremors still racked my frame, my mind a chaotic storm. Escape. Distance. I wrenched the car into gear, tires spitting gravel as I accelerated out of the forsaken place, eyes glued to the road ahead, refusing the treacherous lure of the rear-view mirror. Yet glance I did, again and again, my haunted gaze searching the receding darkness for a pale face, shrouded figure. Nothing. Only the empty asphalt spooling out behind me. Miles flew past before the shaking subsided enough to pull into the harsh, fluorescent glare of a 24-hour gas station. Even under those bright lights, the chill lingered. I didn't know what I had encountered in that pocket of lonely night, what entity masquerading as frail desperation had brushed against me. I knew only this. That rest stop was now a scar on the map of memory, a place I would never, ever revisit. Pinpointing the exact moment awareness dawned remains elusive. Night pressed in, a humid shroud clinging close, and I recall standing adrift in the living space, directly beneath that juncture where wall met ceiling. Sleep, once more, had proven a fickle visitor, too much heat, an unshakable agitation within. The apartment lay hushed, its pale surfaces absorbing the weak diffusion from a solitary lamp burning down the hall. My gaze lifted, narrowed. There, nestled in the corner's apex, a darkness resided, a subtle bloom almost lost in the geometry. It had no business being there. These walls I'd painted myself, mere months prior. Immaculate was the intention, the promise. Initially, my mind grasped for the mundane. Mildew, perhaps, or the telltale signature of a hidden leak. I rose onto the balls of my feet, neck straining. The ceiling's texture offered no anomaly. Killing the hall light plunged the room into deeper obscurity, yet the mark persisted. A shadow divorced from any discernible origin. Light restored, I willed myself back towards the bedroom, towards forgetting. But the unease lingered, a persistent subcutaneous itch. This dwelling, secured a year past after escaping a place that perpetually felt borrowed, represented sanctuary, a deliberate erasure of the past. An old structure, yes, but cared for. And this top-floor unit, with its soaring ceilings and generous fenestration, had sung to me of light, of volume. I craved that expanse, having suffocated in a previous constricting studio. Relief was the lure. Now, prone in the dark, sleep refusing its solace, I felt the presence of that stain in the living room, a weight pressing just beyond sight. My breathing grew shallow, chest constricting against an invisible band. Morning scrutiny revealed no change, or none my eye could calibrate. Perhaps exhaustion had warped perception the night before. I attempted dismissal, yet a disquietude remained, a discordant note. A chair dragged beneath the corner served as a makeshift platform, reaching, slow, deliberate. Fingertips met only the cool, undisturbed plane of paint. No moisture, no textural flaw, no film of dust. Stepping down, however, restored the visual fact. The dark shape clung fast, an aberration imprinted more on my psyche than the plaster. The subsequent week saw me immersed in work, a graphic artist navigating freelance currents, my home, my studio. Ordinarily, the quiet hum of the laptop, the silent companionship of midday sun slanting through the panes, was a balm. Now, each rise, each stretch, invariably ended with my gaze pulled ceilingward. The blemish seemed larger, not startlingly so, but undeniably amplified. What began as a mote now resembled a tarnished coin. Its periphery frayed, indistinct, and under prolonged focus, it seemed to possess a subtle tremor, a flexing that warped the clean lines of the corner. Armed with a step stool and a dampened cloth, I tried erasure. The cloth returned pristine. The mark remained immutable. Standing utterly still, I hunted for a source, a stray beam, an awkward reflection. Nothing logically accounted for its presence. It wasn't color precisely, but an absence, deeper than the surrounding white. A void. Sleep deteriorated further. Night after night yielded awakenings drenched in sweat, heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Phantom creaks whispered overhead, easily attributable to the old building settling its bones, its pipes murmuring their ancient dialogues. Yet, the atmosphere had shifted, thickened, a palpable pressure descending. One afternoon, compelled by a rising dread, I delved into the apartment's forgotten recesses, seeking explanation. The previous occupant had abandoned several cartons in the storage alcove. Inertia had kept me from discarding them. Within lay brittle periodicals, yellowed newsprint, and a compact leather-bound journal, its pages fragile with age, mostly detritus. But nestled within the journal, amongst pages dense with inscrutable script, lay a faded monochrome photograph. It depicted a room's corner. This room surely, though the perspective differed. The walls appeared starker, barer. And there, in the image's upper reaches, faint but undeniable, a dark smear, unnervingly akin to my own. The photograph blurred under scrutiny, but the shape was there. A cold tide washed over my skin. Whoever resided here before had seen it too. That evening, extinguishing all illumination, I stood sentinel in the living room's heart, staring upward, allowing my vision to acclimate to the profound dark. The occlusion loomed larger still, perhaps the breadth of my hand. Silence intensified until my own pulse became the dominant sound. Then, movement. A ripple seemed to disturb the spot's surface, suggesting not mere discoloration but something vital within the darkness. My breath hitched. Illusion, I told myself. Ocular trickery. Yet the constriction in my chest tightened, a suffocating grip that stole the air. I slapped the switch for a nearby lamp. Light flooded the space, arresting the shape, rendering it inert once more, though no smaller. Ignoring it proved futile. Over the ensuing days, the shadow, for that's what it felt like now, spread with unnerving velocity, particularly under the cloak of night. Each dawn revealed incremental gains, tendrils creeping along the ceiling's edge, beginning a descent towards the walls. Its boundaries writhed into subtle configurations, filament-thin extensions curling against the plaster. Not patterned, not precisely, yet possessed of a seeming intent, methodically colonizing my haven. Consideration turned to seeking aid. But who does one summon for a living shadow? An electrician? A plasterer? An exorcist? The building superintendent was away. I attempted contact with a friend, Leo, but the words felt absurd, impossible to articulate. I mumbled something about feeling off-kilter, needing company. He promised a visit the following week. A week felt an eternity away. That night I retreated to the bedroom, door secured, the hallway light left burning as a futile ward. Drifting through uneasy layers of semi-consciousness, a sense of movement permeated the barrier. Rising, heart hammering, I eased the bedroom door open a fraction. Peering out, the corridor lay dim, silent, yet the walls themselves seemed duller, their pigment muted, as if the shadow were somehow bleeding outwards. A film of cold sweat slicked my skin. My throat was parched. I raided the kitchen for water, gulping it down too quickly. Action was imperative, confrontation necessary. Armed with a powerful torch, I marched to the corner, directing the beam squarely at the phenomenon. The intense light revealed only the mundane texture of the ceiling. Yet, standing there, a tremor began in my legs. A presence. Not auditory, not tactile, but an undeniable weight in the room that knotted my stomach. My heart battered against my ribs. A metallic taste bloomed on my tongue, and the fine hairs on my arms prickled erect. The darkness possessed substance, and I wasn't merely observing it. I was feeling its infiltration into the very air I breathed. For days, small acts of resistance followed. Sheets of stark white paper, taped fastidiously to the ceiling corner. By morning, they hung curled, edges peeled back. Repainting crossed my mind, flooding the area with brilliant light via a new lamp. But a deeper knowing dismissed these as futile gestures. This transcended paint, defied illumination. It was other, an entity predating my arrival, perhaps by decades, intent on consuming the space I desperately claimed. My appetite fled. Nausea became a nightly companion. The simplest food tasted of dust and effort. The apartment grew oppressive, stifling. Windows flung wide admitted the city's distant clamor, traffic, sirens, a thin tether to the outside world. But dusk inevitably fell, and with it, the knowledge of what waited within. Leaving occurred to me, escaping to some anonymous motel. But finances were a constraint, and pride, or perhaps some morbid fascination, balked at surrendering without understanding. If I could decipher its nature, perhaps I could halt its progress. One particular night, the tension reached its zenith. The shadow now commanded nearly half the ceiling, its dark fronds tracing the room's architecture. In the low wattage glow from my bedside lamp filtering into the living area, I could perceive it pulsing, a slow rhythmic throb, as if it drew breath. My own respiration grew ragged, pulse a frantic tempo in my ears. I stepped into the living room, trembling but resolute. "What is it you want?" The question emerged a strangled whisper. Silence answered, punctuated only by that relentless, encroaching darkness. The old photograph surfaced in memory. I returned to the storage alcove, rummaging anew, seeking another fragment, any clue. Shoving aside musty publications, my fingers brushed against a folded slip of paper wedged behind a section of loose baseboard. A receipt, decades old, for unspecified household repairs. Scrawled on the reverse in unsteady script. "It thrives on your fear." A chill deeper than before permeated my bones. The previous tenant knew. This was their cryptic warning. Fury, hot and sudden, surged. Was this thing feeding on my terror? If so, theoretically it could be starved. But exhaustion frayed my nerves. Fear had become my baseline state. Holding the torch steady required conscious effort. Facing the corner, arms crossed against a rising tide of despair, tears blurring my vision, I muttered, voice cracking, "You won't take me." I extinguished all lights save one small lamp near the exit. I forced myself to stand directly beneath the encroaching mass. My heart felt dangerously erratic. Dizziness washed over me. Slow breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. My stomach roiled. I stared directly upward, compelling myself to witness it. The mass quivered, a faint shimmering along its edges. My knees threatened to buckle. I leaned heavily against the wall, the plaster cool against my feverish skin. Then an act of recklessness. Hand raised, I pressed my palm flat against the wall, just below the shadow's leading edge. I braced for contact, for something to seize my wrist, pull me into its void. Nothing. Only the familiar chalky feel of paint. But a faint groan emanated from the structure above. A subtle displacement of the atmosphere, like an unseen current stirred. Nausea crested, sharp and overwhelming. I stumbled back, hand clamped over my mouth, breath sawing in my throat. The ceiling seemed almost entirely consumed now, the white obliterated by spreading darkness. The presence in the room intensified, viscous, like wading through invisible pitch. My lungs strained. Every instinct screamed flight, yet I remained rooted, sweat tracing cold paths down my temples. Vision swam. A choice loomed. Abandon everything now or commit to something drastic. Snatching a broom, I jabbed its handle upwards. The bristles scraped futilely against the dark expanse. The handle, slicked with sweat, slipped from my grasp. A curse escaped me, low and bitter. The darkness convulsed, and for a fleeting, terrifying instant, I perceived a shape within it. An elongated silhouette, hideously distorted, vaguely human. Resolve shattered. I bolted, stumbling over the edge of a rug, bursting into the comparative brilliance of the hallway. I gasped, dragging air into starved lungs, head pounding. Pacing the narrow corridor, the urge to flee, to abandon everything, warred with a stubborn refusal to be utterly routed. After minutes that stretched thin, I forced myself back through the doorway. I needed to know if it pursued. Inside, a fragile quietude seemed to have settled. The lamp by the door flickered, then held steady. My gaze shot upwards. The darkness remained immense, yet perhaps its advance had slowed, or was it merely wishful thinking? I retreated to bed, leaving the bedroom door ajar, the lamp burning. Sleep eventually claimed me, fractured by dreams of shifting voids and suffocating silence. Morning revealed the ceiling stained more profoundly than ever. nearly the entire surface succumbed. Yet it had halted, seemingly just shy of the bedroom threshold, as if hesitant. Dragging a hand across my face, I felt the rasp of stubble, the residue of sweat. I felt depleted, brittle, nerves abraded raw. Catching my reflection in the bathroom mirror, a peculiarity snagged my attention. The skin beneath my eyes seemed shadowed, bruised. Leaning closer, I imagined, or perhaps perceived, a fleeting darkness flicker across my own features, an echo of the blight overhead. The decision crystallized. I would leave at twilight and not return. A motel, my car, anywhere but here. Yet, as I began gathering essentials, a peculiar resistance manifested, the air near the exit feeling dense, obstructive. I pushed through, stepping into the corridor, pausing for one final backward glance. Through the dim light spilling from the hallway, I discerned within the ceiling's vast darkness a contorted shape, a hollow suggestion that might resolve into a face, had I the courage to look longer. I slammed the door, the sound echoing unnaturally, my heart a frantic bird against my ribs. Even now, gripping the cool metal of the stairwell banister, I feel it. The presence lingers behind that door, interwoven with the plaster, waiting. My hand drifts to my face, slick with perspiration. My reflection stares back from the polished railing. For an infinitesimal second, I see the shadow ripple behind my own eyes. I blink, and it vanishes. But the knowing remains. It isn't finished. That darkness has sampled my fear, and I suspect its appetite will not be confined to a single apartment. It possesses patience, a profound hunger, and I carry the chilling certainty that the next time I meet my own gaze, I might not be the only one looking back. The neon cursive of Sal's Slice Haven bled a weak crimson onto the rain-slicked asphalt, a stuttering pulse against the oppressive dark. Each flicker seemed a gasp for light in the deserted lot. Leo glanced at the dashboard clock, its green numerals stark. 11:47 p.m., one more run, then blessed oblivion until the next shift. He'd been slinging pizzas for Sal for half a year, channeling the meager earnings towards the ever-looming tuition fees. It wasn't a life, just the means to maybe build one later. Mostly, the job was a predictable rhythm of addresses and lukewarm greetings. Mostly. A cardboard square, still radiating warmth through its vents, occupied the passenger seat. This address, though, clung to the frayed edge of their delivery map, a sector swallowed by encroaching woodland he barely knew. Pulling the rattling sedan out, a dissonant chord struck within him, a prickling awareness that this delivery felt askew. Rain hammered the windshield, thick percussive drops overwhelming the wiper's frantic sweeps. The streets constricted, houses shrinking back from the road, replaced by dripping silhouettes of trees. His phone's map guided him down a serpentine lane bordered by dense black forest. He nearly overshot the turnoff, a gravel scar disappearing into tangled undergrowth. Branches clawed at the car's flanks as he navigated the rutted path. Finally, abruptly, the trees relented. A skeletal house stood hunched against the storm, swallowed by shadow but for a single jaundiced eye of light high on its second floor. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the rain's drumming. Grabbing the pizza, its comforting heat already leaching into the damp chill, Leo approached. The porch groaned under his weight, each step a dissonant creak in the night's symphony. He lifted a hand to knock, but the wood swung inward before his knuckles met it. The figure framed in the doorway commanded an involuntary retreat. Towering, gaunt, with a beard like tangled wire, and eyes that seemed to pierce the gloom and pin him where he stood. A stained undershirt clung to his frame, His jeans were relics of another era. "Ah, pizza." Leo's voice hitched, the box offered like a shield. A grin stretched the man's lips, a rictus devoid of warmth. "Right on schedule," he rasped, the sound like stones grinding together. "Bring it on in. Wallet's upstairs." Every nerve ending shrieked, "Flight." Back to the car, engine roaring, gravel spitting. But the phantom of Sal's disappointment, the fear of termination over perceived rudeness, held him fast. Against the screaming protest of his instincts, Leo crossed the threshold. Inside, darkness clung like velvet, thick with the acrid bite of stale smoke and an underlying metallic tang that curled his nostrils. The man steered him through a constricted hallway towards what might have been a living room. "Set her down," he instructed, nodding towards a low table buried beneath a landscape of crushed cans and overflowing ashtrays. "Be right back with the cash." He vanished up a protesting staircase, his heavy tread fading overhead. Leo stood rooted, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, loud enough surely to echo in the oppressive quiet. His eyes darted, seeking escape routes. And then he saw it. Tucked in the room's deepest shadow, partially obscured by a listing threadbare armchair, lay a canvas duffel. Its zipper gaped open, revealing the cold, unmistakable glint of a gun barrel. He froze, thoughts scattering like startled birds. This wasn't eccentricity. This was fundamentally, terrifyingly wrong. Out. Now. He pivoted, but the creak of returning footsteps on the stairs arrested his movement. Panic clamped down, cold and tight. "Act normal. Don't let him see." The gaunt man reappeared, clutching a fistful of crumpled currency. "Here you are, son," he grunted, extending the bills. "Keep it." Leo's hand trembled as he took the money. His gaze snagged on the man's knuckles. Dark, crusted stains marred the skin. Stains that looked unnervingly like dried blood. "Thanks," he choked out. "Night." He turned, forcing a steady pace while his legs screamed to bolt. The front door was an eternity away. Almost there. Then a muffled thump from above, sharp and distinct, followed by a sound that could have been a choked gasp. A hand, strong as banded iron, clamped onto his shoulder. "Hear something, kid?" Leo shook his head, mute, eyes locked on the door, so close yet impossibly distant. "Good," the man's voice dropped, laced with menace. "'Cause there ain't nothing to hear. Best get on home now. Late hour. Roads get tricky." He was practically propelled out onto the groaning porch, the door slamming shut behind him with finality. Leo stumbled down the steps, legs rubbery. Reaching the car felt like crossing a vast distance. His shaking fingers fumbled the keys, the ignition catching only on the third try. As he threw the car into reverse, backing frantically down the overgrown track, his headlights swept the house one last time. Framed in that high, lonely window, a face. Pale female, eyes wide with stark terror, mouth stretched in a scream that made no sound. He hit the tarmac, engine whining, gravel spraying in his wake. His mind struggled to assemble the fragments. The weapon, the blood, the silent scream from the window. An image coalesced, stark and horrifying. Police. He needed to call the police. Yet, as his hand reached for his phone, doubt coiled in his gut. What if he'd misread everything? An overactive imagination fueled by the storm and the creepy setting. Losing his job seemed trivial compared to a false report. The potential trouble. He pulled onto the shoulder, the rain still lashing down, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles shone white. Drive back to Sal's, pretend the night ended with the slamming door, or make the call, risk everything on the terrifying possibility that he was right? It wasn't, he realized, a choice at all. He dialed 911, his voice unsteady as he relayed the disjointed horror. The house, the man, the gun, the face. "Drive to the nearest station," the dispatcher instructed. "Wait there." The ensuing hours dissolved into a haze of fluorescent lights, lukewarm coffee, and endless questions. He recounted everything, the details spilling out. The metallic smell, the stained knuckles, the desperate eyes in the window. They listened intently, the address clearly striking a chord. It wasn't until the gray light of dawn filtered through the station windows that the full picture emerged. The gaunt man was a specter haunting police files across 3 states, linked to a chain of vanishings. The raid confirmed their worst fears, uncovering grim evidence. And the woman? Alive. Captive in that upstairs room. His delivery, his call, they had intercepted her final hours. The weeks that followed were a strange whirlwind. More interviews, hushed conversations with detectives, a formal commendation, awkward requests from local news crews. Sal gave him a raise, told him to take all the time he needed. But even as normalcy tried to reassert itself, the night remained vivid, indelible. The failing neon, the rain-lashed woods, the silent scream behind the glass. It stalked his sleep. He kept delivering pizzas, though. The routine felt altered, imbued with a strange gravity. Each door could be a threshold, each transaction freighted with unseen possibilities. Pulling up to unfamiliar houses, knocking on doors shrouded in darkness, he felt it keenly. The razor-thin membrane between the ordinary and the profound, between a simple delivery and a moment that changes everything. Sometimes the most critical junctures arrive disguised as the utterly mundane. Sometimes it's just a pizza, until it isn't. The pause came on an incline of raw earth, late afternoon sun slanting through the dense canopy. 4 figures, breath pluming in the cooling air. Silas, Reese, Javier, and I. We'd sought the oblivion of this remote park, lured by whispers of untrodden trails and vistas worth the ache. Towering sentinels of bark and wood pressed close, their foliage a dry tapestry that hissed with every errant breeze. It felt like a forgotten corner of the world. My gaze, snagged from the trail dust, drifted upwards to the jagged tree line. There, suspended, pulsed a mote of impossible luminescence. From this distance, no larger than a pearl, it blazed with a cold white fire above the highest branches. Not static, no. It performed a stuttering dance. Abrupt vectors left, then right. A sudden ascent before freezing midair, only to twitch again. Utterly silent. I strained my ears, desperate for the faintest drone, the buzz of machinery. Nothing but the ragged rhythm of my own lungs and the scuff of Reese's boot shifting grit. Sweat slicked my brow as I gestured skyward. Silas narrowed his eyes, muttering about atmospheric tricks, perhaps the glint of some distant aircraft wing. Unlikely, I thought. The trajectory was too aberrant, too deliberate. It darted, paused, ascended, a pinprick of fierce light against the deepening azure. Glimpsed through leaf gaps, its glow was undeniable. Javier fumbled for his phone, angling the lens upward, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. No bars, no connection. The resulting video, a jittery smear of white against shaky green, earned a low curse. Probably junk, he grumbled, though the set of his jaw betrayed a deeper disquiet. An unease rippled through us. We were leagues from any known viewpoint, any observation post. A drone? Whose? Watching hikers on a trail deserted since dawn? The logic frayed. Forward. The plan held. A streamside camp awaited several miles deeper into the wilderness. We resumed our trek, cadence steady, yet our eyes were now perpetually drawn upward, scanning the leafy ceiling. The luminous anomaly kept pace, a silent escort drifting along the arboreal heights to our left. It would vanish behind thick boughs, offering moments of fragile hope. Perhaps it was gone, only to reappear further ahead, or disconcertingly lagging behind. Its noiseless velocity defied reason. No whir of rotors, no whisper of displaced air. As the sun bled towards the horizon, casting long shadows, our earlier camaraderie evaporated, replaced by a taut vigilance. Reese's occasional tap on my arm became a silent alarm, signaling its reappearance. Silas, his patience snapping, hurled a defiant, "Hey!" into the indifferent woods. The light offered no acknowledgement, merely winking in and out of existence between the leaves. When it was hidden, a knot formed in my gut, my throat constricting with a papery dryness. I braced for it to materialize elsewhere, perhaps directly overhead. Conversation dwindled to the rhythmic crunch of boots on earth, the rustle of nylon packs. An hour's march brought us to a modest clearing, a patch of flattened earth punctuated by fallen logs, our designated haven. Below, the murmur of the promised stream drifted uphill. The air cooled rapidly, the sky igniting in bruised oranges and fading pinks. Packs slid to the ground. I tried to coax the tension from my shoulders, acutely aware of the ache in my thighs, the persistent dryness coating my tongue despite a swig of water. My eyes swept the perimeter, searching the darkening silhouette of the trees. Nothing. The others scanned too, silent queries in their posture. "Maybe it buggered off," Silas offered, forcing optimism. "Sun went down, reflections gone?" The explanation felt hollow, thin. Its movements had possessed an unsettling volition, a purpose we couldn't fathom. We erected our temporary shelters with minimal exchange, each absorbed in the mechanics, unfurling nylon, driving stakes into resistant soil, stretching rain flies taut. Javier coaxed a blue flame from his stove, heating rations. Reese remained sentinel, gaze fixed on the tree line as if anticipating an aerial assault. Silas fussed with his headlamp, beam jittering nervously. As true dark descended, headlamps carved cones of fragile light, making the surrounding woods feel claustrophobic, the trees pressing inward. Every rustle in the undergrowth, the snap of a twig under some unseen creature's foot, stretched my nerves taut. Dinner was a tasteless necessity, consumed in near silence, the vast star-dusted canvas above offering no comfort, only a backdrop against which I constantly expected the white point to reappear. The night breathed its usual forest sighs, chitinous clicks of insects, the soughing breeze, shifting leaves, yet normalcy felt suspect. Hushed tones replaced our earlier silence. Silas proposed a vigil. Just in case. No one argued. The day's encounter had burrowed under our skin, an unnerving sense of being targeted, observed. We agreed to rotate shifts, a small concession to frayed nerves. I took the first watch, settling onto a log, headlamp extinguished to save power and preserve night vision, flashlight clutched like a talisman. Perhaps 30 minutes dissolved into the darkness before my breath hitched. There, across the clearing, suspended above the black lace of the trees, the same incandescent point. A cold dread bloomed in my chest. My grip tightened on the flashlight. I raised it, sending a weak beam probing towards the intruder. It remained impassive, executing its slight, silent oscillations. I crossed to Reese's tent, whispering his name urgently. He emerged swiftly, blinking, then his body went rigid as his eyes found the light. His low call brought Silas and Javier stumbling out, bleary but instantly alert, their own beams joining mine, converging uselessly on the distant glow. We stood, a quartet bathed in artificial light, staring at the impossible. Silence stretched, thick with unspoken fear. I felt the fine hairs rise on my forearms, my pulse accelerating, breath catching high in my throat. The light dipped behind the canopy, vanished, then winked back into existence on the clearing's far side. It was circling us. Javier's voice, rough with tension, ripped through the quiet. "Who's out there? What is it you want?" Only the echo answered. A desperate thought surfaced. Overwhelm it with light. Reese rummaged in his pack, producing a high-lumen torch. He thumbed it on, a brilliant shaft slicing the night, illuminating leaves and branches in stark relief. But the source of the luminescence remained elusive, veiled, just beyond clear sight, or perhaps shielded by the intervening foliage. Then, abruptly, it was gone. Reese swore softly, a harsh exhalation. Javier spat onto the damp earth, rubbing his arms against a chill that wasn't entirely atmospheric. A hurried, whispered conference followed. Fleeing now, navigating treacherous terrain by headlamp alone, felt reckless, a shortcut to becoming lost or injured. Dawn. We would wait for dawn, pack swiftly, and retreat. Staying felt untenable. The weight of unseen observation pressed too heavily. For a long while we remained standing, sweeping our beams through the trees, hoping, dreading, to spot it again. It withheld its presence. Exhaustion eventually gnawed through the adrenaline. We retreated to our nylon cocoons, agreeing to maintain a staggered, restless watch from within. Cocooned in my sleeping bag, sleep remained elusive. My mind compulsively replayed the image, that silent, incandescent dot, its movements too fluid, too soundless. I rubbed tired eyes, forcing slow breaths. Eventually, a shallow, dreamless state claimed me, only to be fractured by Reese shaking my shoulder. "It's back," he whispered, his voice strained. The pre-dawn chill bit as I stumbled out. He pointed towards the dense woods, my eyes strained, finding only interlaced branches against the faintest suggestion of approaching light. It was circling, he insisted, his certainty absolute. I didn't doubt him. We stood for minutes, beams tracing arcs through the trees, illuminating nothing but familiar bark and leaves. Weariness pulled me back to my tent. Reese lingered, a solitary figure scanning the darkness, before finally retreating as well. Gray morning light seeped through the tent fabric, rousing me. My back protested the night spent on hard ground. Outside, Javier coaxed water to a boil over the small stove, his eyes bloodshot. Silas sat hunched on a log, raking fingers through his hair. Reese was already dismantling his sleeping setup with efficient, grim determination. The unspoken consensus was palpable. Escape. A quick energy bar. Bitter coffee that scalded more than it warmed. And we began breaking camp with frantic haste. In the daylight, the forest resumed its disguise of normalcy. Trees, earth, leaf litter, sunbeams shafting through the canopy. No trace of our nocturnal visitor. We shouldered our packs and turned back towards the path we'd ascended. The path descended, familiar yet now imbued with menace. Our boots beat a relentless rhythm against stone and soil. Eyes constantly flickered towards the canopy, scanning for any anomaly against the blue. Nothing. I concentrated on the simple mechanics of walking, on the in and out of breath, willing the miles away, yearning for the mundane safety of the trailhead. Sweat plastered my shirt to my back, a dull throb resonated in my thighs. Silence reigned, broken only by our footfalls and the occasional startled bird call. Silas cast frequent glances over his shoulder. Reese's gaze remained habitually skyward, hand shielding his eyes. This trek, conceived as joyous escape, had become a forced march. Hours crawled by under the indifferent sun. The air, thick with the scent of pine resin and damp earth, felt heavy. Midday found us paused at a wider section of trail, consulting maps that confirmed hours still lay between us and the ranger station. We forced down jerky and water, throats too tight for appetite. Javier's eyes, like mine, ceaselessly swept the ridges. Would it reappear in the glare of day? A treacherous mix of hope and dread churned within me. We pressed on. Then, perhaps another hour onward, a peripheral flash, intense, unnatural. I halted, eyes locked on the ridge to our right. The others followed my gaze. It had returned. A point of sharp white light hovering just above the serrated tree line, winking, partially obscured by branches, as if playing hide and seek. My pulse leaped. Sweat prickled my palms. The tension across my shoulders became a physical weight. I simply pointed. A low oath escaped Silas. Reese's jaw clenched. Javier shook his head, phone raised again in a futile attempt to capture the spectral dot. We stood rooted for a moment. It maintained its distance, neither approaching nor retreating, simply mirroring our position. When we resumed walking, it paced us, a silent, luminous shadow flitting along the ridge, always just frustratingly veiled. I picked up the pace, almost jogging. It matched us. I slowed. It slowed. The chilling certainty of being observed, studied, settled deep in my bones. My stomach coiled. I licked dry lips, tasting salt. Tightening my pack straps became a subconscious act of bracing against the unseen. Eventually, it winked out of sight once more. We pushed onward, each footfall heavier than the last. The silence between us thick with unspoken anxieties. I saw Reese's knuckles were white where he gripped his trekking pole. Silas shook his head almost imperceptibly, repeatedly. Javier rubbed the back of his neck raw. My focus narrowed to the single imperative. Get out. The hours bled together. The woods remained stubbornly themselves, yet subtle shifts, a familiar bend, a thinning of the undergrowth, signaled our slow approach to civilization. Then a landmark. The signpost near the wooden bench we'd passed on the way in. Perhaps 30 minutes remained to the ranger station. Sunlight beat down, warm on my skin. A final backward glance revealed only trees and sky. It was truly gone. Relief washed over me, tepid and incomplete, failing to dislodge the knot of unease. I craved walls, doors, the presence of indifferent strangers. We reached the station, bypassed the building itself, and made a beeline for the gravel lot for the comforting solidity of the car. Silas turned the key. The engine's rumble was the most welcome sound I'd heard in 2 days. Doors slammed shut, sealing us inside. No one spoke of it. The shared imperative was to put distance, physical and mental, between ourselves and the experience. As we pulled away, onto the paved road leading back towards towns and streetlights, a measure of tension eased from my shoulders. But my mind remained snagged on the memory. That silent, impossibly agile point of light against the trees. Had others witnessed such things in these woods? We never asked. Reporting it felt futile, inviting disbelief we couldn't counter with explanations we didn't possess. We drove home. Subsequent texts skirted the subject, brief check-ins that tacitly agreed to let it lie buried. Yet the visceral memory persists. The parched throat, the hammering heart, the cold trickle of sweat as I stared up at that inexplicable watcher in the trees. It's etched somewhere deep. and it's nothing I ever wish to encounter again. Weariness had sunk deep into my bones by the time twilight bled fully into night. I collapsed onto the familiar cushions of my sofa, the day's demands finally relinquishing their grip. A quick message for Leo. That was all. A tap on the screen, the red icon glowing. 20 seconds, maybe less, into the digital ether. A mundane update about a delay, a promise for tomorrow. The apartment held its breath around me, windows sealed against the city's slumber, silence thick and undisturbed. Just me. Just a fleeting message. A routine check for clarity, a thumb swipe for playback, then the anomaly. Beneath the tired cadence of my own voice, a phantom sigh, something else. Faint, indistinct, a susurrus woven into the recording's fabric. I froze the playback, the progress bar a static line on the illuminated screen. Street noise? Impossible. I was adrift in the living room's quiet heart. The world outside muted by glass and brick. No television chatter, no radio static. Only the low, hypnotic drone of the ceiling fan overhead. A sound too steady, too known to be the source. Again, I pressed play, leaning closer, straining. My own words, clear and familiar. Hey Leo, just checking in. I'll send you the details tomorrow. But shadowed by that presence, a breathy murmur, less sound than the idea of sound, clinging parasitically to my own syllables. Not interference, not static. This felt organic, intentional, yet utterly unintelligible. A warmth bloomed on my face, prickling. I held my breath, listening again. And again. The whisper remained, a fleeting shh. Maybe? Genderless. Remote. An acoustic ghost. I thumbed the volume higher. My own voice boomed, unnaturally loud in the stillness. Yet the whisper remained stubbornly faint, distant, as if trapped behind an invisible barrier. 5 times I listened, each repetition etching a fresh line of cold along my spine. The apartment offered no answers, only profound silence. I scanned the room, shadows pooling near the dormant kitchen, the hallway a dim corridor leading to empty spaces. Utterly, undeniably alone. A test, then, to banish this absurdity. I recorded anew. Testing. I spoke into the phone, followed by a few seconds of held silence. Playback, my voice crisp. Then pristine quiet. Nothing more. A wave of shaky relief washed over me. A trick of the ears, perhaps. Overtired imagination. But returning to that first recording shattered the illusion. The whisper persisted, stubbornly real, embedded in that specific slice of time. I sent the file to Leo, adding a hesitant text. Hear anything odd? The weight stretched, taut and uncomfortable. I felt foolish, suspended between mundane reality and creeping dread. I pushed off the couch, flicking on the kitchen light, its sudden glare chasing shadows. A restless patrol of my small domain. Windows latched tight, overlooking the silent moonlit courtyard 3 floors below. No proximate source for a whisper. My pulse drummed a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I downed a glass of water, leaning heavily on the counter, grasping for logic. Microphone glitch? Speaker distortion? Some freak electronic crosstalk. Another trial. This is a second test, I dictated clearly. I'm alone, just testing my phone. I listened back, my voice solitary and unremarkable. Silence followed. I placed the phone back on the coffee table, a small dark rectangle in the lamplight, and navigated once more to the initial recording. The whisper breathed alongside my words, undiminished. I unearthed headphones, plugging the jack into the phone's port, sealing the sound directly into my ears. Isolation. Now, the whisper gained a chilling intimacy, still unintelligible yet undeniably present, closer somehow. Soft exhalations, the ghost of breath near my ear, as if someone stood just beyond my shoulder, murmuring secrets meant only for the void. I spun around, heart leaping. Empty air greeted me. The fine hairs on my forearms prickled upright. Again, I swept through the apartment, bedroom, bathroom, peering into the dark maw of the closet. Silence. Emptiness. The stark fact of my solitude pressed in. I retreated to the kitchen, forcing normalcy, making a sandwich, the mundane motions a clumsy anchor. I wasn't hungry, but the ritual felt necessary. I ate standing, gaze sweeping the familiar territory. Everything ordinary. The refrigerator's low thrum, the faint buzz from the overhead fixture, the distant sigh of traffic. Normal sounds, explainable sounds. Nothing like the secret clinging to my recording. My phone vibrated against the counter, startling me. Leo. A text blinked onto the screen. Yeah, something weird is in the background. WTF is that? A knot cinched tight in my stomach. Not imagined. Real enough for another to hear. I don't know. I typed back, fingers clumsy. I was alone. A moment later, a voice message icon appeared. Leo's voice trying for casual but laced with unease. Man, that's genuinely creepy. Sounds like a whisper right behind you. You absolutely sure the place was empty? The shared bewilderment offered no comfort, only amplified the strangeness. I had to try once more. Back to the sofa's exact spot. I even silenced the ceiling fan, plunging the room into absolute quiet. I recorded the original phrase. Hey Leo, just checking in. I'll send you the details tomorrow. Same cadence, same weary tone. Playback. Only my voice echoed in the profound silence. I tried again. And a third time, each recording pristine, solitary. Yet returning to the first message felt like opening a haunted box. The whisper remained, an indelible artifact seemingly fused to that singular recording. I fiddled with the phone's rudimentary audio tools, trying to isolate the phantom sound, magnifying, replaying endlessly. Ear pressed tight to the speaker, my own pulse thudding against the plastic casing. I strained, desperate for a single recognizable syllable, but caught only that soft, sibilant flow. Shh. Undeniably speech-like, yet forever dissolving before comprehension. A bead of sweat traced a path down my spine. My breathing felt shallow, quick. Driven by a primal need for external confirmation, I went to the front door, peered through the fisheye lens. The corridor outside lay still, bathed in the weak glow of the overhead light. I unlocked the deadbolt, opened the door a crack, then wider, stepping onto the worn carpet. Utter silence. I listened, holding my breath, but the hallway offered only emptiness. Retreating inside, the click of the lock felt insufficient. One last check. Every room, every shadow. Standing in the center of my bedroom, phone held aloft, I recorded a final pointless message. Playback revealed only my own voice, alone in the quiet. The whisper remained where it had first appeared, a digital ghost trapped in a 20-second loop, inexplicable and chillingly present. Midway through an otherwise unremarkable Sunday, the first missive materialized. It rested within an envelope aged beyond its years, bearing no stamp, only my name, Silas Thorne, scrawled across the brittle paper in hesitant graphite strokes, as if sketched in near darkness. A tremor, cold and unwelcome, traced my spine before the seal was even broken. The paper exhaled a scent of dust and forgotten things, the aroma of time locked away in a lightless chest. Inside, a single imperative, repeated in a frantic looping script: "Come." Its meaning eluded me. I placed the letter on the granite indifference of my kitchen counter. A knot tightened in my chest, a physical manifestation of unease I tried to dismiss. A prank, perhaps? Some bizarre guerrilla marketing campaign? No place was named, no hour specified, just that solitary, insistent summons. I forced myself through the motions of the following day, projecting normalcy at the office while the word echoed silently. Returning home, I found its twin slipped beneath my apartment door. The same archaic paper, the same faint, musty scent, the identical solitary command: "Come." A cold fist clenched in my gut. I scanned the empty corridor. No retreating footsteps, no lingering presence, nothing to betray the courier. Bolting the door, I stood clutching the envelope, my palms growing slick, my thoughts fractured into 1,000 unanswerable questions. Still, I shoved it into a drawer, burying the mystery beneath the mundane ritual of preparing dinner. The dawn brought a third. Lodged in my mailbox, flagrantly ignoring the conventions of postage or return addresses, it simply reiterated, "Come." This time the letters sprawled larger, imbued with a starker urgency, a demand to be acknowledged. The pressure in my chest intensified. Back inside, I compulsively checked my phone. No missed calls from unfamiliar numbers, no cryptic texts. I sank onto the sofa, the television flickering unnoticed images before my unfocused eyes. My gaze kept returning to the front door, half expecting another spectral delivery. By week's end, the count had reached 5. Each arrival mirrored the last. The time-worn envelope, the desiccated paper breathing its dusty history, and that unwavering singular verb: "Come." A new vigilance took root. Windows were checked, locks rechecked each night. A pervasive sensation of being observed prickled at my skin. Every innocuous sound, a branch scraping glass, the sigh of a passing car, became amplified, suspect. Sleep offered little refuge, fracturing into sweaty, anxious awakenings, my ears straining for phantom rustlings near the door. Each time I investigated, silence answered. On the 6th day, an inexplicable impulse solidified within me. It defies rational explanation, this sudden certainty. The letters offered no coordinates, yet an image bloomed in my mind. The derelict train station moldering on the city's fringe. I possessed no conscious memory of the place, had never set foot inside its decaying shell, knew only that it had been shuttered for decades. I recalled driving past once, noting the boarded-up apertures and the weathered signs forbidding trespass. Yet that morning, I awoke with an unshakable conviction. The letters were drawing me there. A visceral tremor of fear warred with a sense that inaction was no longer viable. Yielding, I drove towards the city limits, towards the skeletal remains of the station. I parked beside a perimeter of corroded fencing. Though midday, the sky wore a bruised, overcast pallor, leaching color from the world. Emerging from the car, an uneasy current traveled up my neck. The station itself stood gray and graffiti-scarred, its upper windows dark, vacant eyes. Loose timbers groaned under the wind's invisible pressure. Picking my way through scattered debris, I circled the structure, seeking entry, seeking answers. A breach in the fence offered passage. Beyond lay an old loading platform, its concrete fractured, pocked with stagnant puddles reflecting the dull sky. A peculiar miasma hung in the air, damp decay laced with the ghost of old machine oil. My heart hammered against my ribs. I moved with caution, shards of glass crunching underfoot. A vast cargo door hung slightly ajar, leaking a frail luminescence. the hesitant glow of a dying fluorescent tube, or perhaps a low-powered torch. Peering inside, expecting confrontation, I found only emptiness. I stepped across the threshold. In the cavernous space, illuminated by a single sputtering overhead light, stood a solitary rocking chair. It faced me. Rusted machinery hugged the shadowed walls. Crates huddled in a distant corner. Dust motes danced in the weak light. Then, a faint squeak. The rocking chair shifted, a subtle movement as if recently vacated. My chest constricted. Sweat beaded on my forehead. I scanned the periphery, the deep shadows, anticipating a figure to emerge. Silence. Only the vast, echoing emptiness and the intermittent flicker overhead. I remained frozen for a long minute, adrift. The chair's faint rhythmic protest scraped at my nerves. The urge to speak, to call out, died in my throat. Eventually, drawn by a morbid curiosity, I approached the chair. It was ancient, its wooden frame worn smooth in places, paint flaking from the arms. Dust coated the seat. Faint scuff marks marred the concrete beneath the rockers, evidence of its lonely motion. No letters lay nearby, no notes, no hints to decipher. After moments that stretched into an eternity, the futility of it struck me. This was madness. I retreated from the loading bay, gulping the stale air, striving for composure. A circuit of the station's exterior revealed nothing further, no other anomalies. Disappointment warred with a prickling sense of foolishness. I had chased cryptic summonses to find only dereliction and an inexplicably animated piece of furniture. Returning to my car, I cast glances over my shoulder, the skin across my back crawling. The drive home was a blur of forced rationality, a desperate attempt to convince myself it was over, even as a deeper instinct whispered that I had merely disturbed the surface of something vast and incomprehensible. The letters resumed their silent siege in the following days, slipped under my door with unnerving regularity. Their tenor shifted. They spoke now of us, alluded to our memories, yet withheld the identity of the sender, the nature of the connection. The envelope seemed even more fragile, the script more agitated, bordering on desperate. The same musty odor clung to them. I attempted disposal only to retrieve them from the bin moments later, scrutinizing them for some overlooked clue. Late one night, a soft thump against the door jolted me from the sofa. Heart pounding, I flung the door open, hoping to confront the messenger. The hallway stood vacant. On the mat lay another envelope. My hands shook as I tore it open right there. The message within: "We are waiting." The familiar unsteady hand. A knot formed in my throat, tight and suffocating. I wanted to shout into the void, to demand an appearance, an explanation. Instead, I retreated, the heavy click of the lock echoing in the sudden, oppressive silence of my apartment. It felt smaller, confining. My eyes darted nervously, scanning shadows, window panes. I stuffed the latest missive into the overflowing drawer and sought refuge in bed. But sleep remained elusive. Staring at the ceiling, I listened to the building's nocturnal sighs, each creak a potential intrusion. When sleep finally claimed me, it brought troubled dreams dominated by a lone rocking chair swaying beneath a flickering, dying light. The next morning I called in sick. The thought of navigating the outside world, of feigned normalcy, felt impossible. Paranoia was a tightening shroud. I spent hours peering through the peephole into the empty corridor. Around noon, the confinement became unbearable. Action was necessary. Calling the police felt futile. What tangible threat could I report? A collection of unnerving letters? A feeling? An abandoned station? It smacked of delusion, easily dismissed. Pulling on a jacket, I escaped the apartment, seeking solace in anonymity and fresh air. I walked aimlessly through my neighborhood, scrutinizing faces, searching for a flicker of recognition, of hidden intent. Every casual glance felt like scrutiny. Relaxation was a foreign concept, my gut twisted with suspicion at every turn. Returning that evening, I found it waiting. Another envelope. This one named, "The Place Where We Meet," directing me back to the station's loading bay. And for the first time, a specific instruction. Midnight. The word pulsed on the page. My blood hammered in my ears. Ignoring it felt impossible. A powerful, irrational current pulled me towards this unwanted rendezvous. The fear was sharper now, laced with a desperate need for resolution. The hours leading up to midnight were spent pacing, a caged animal in my own home. Should I tell someone? Bring backup? The thought felt like a betrayal, a potential disruption that might frighten away the architect of this strange torment. In a decision likely born of stress rather than logic, I left my phone on the kitchen counter. Alone felt necessary. The image of the rocking chair flickered behind my eyes, tightening the muscles in my jaw. Around 11:30, armed only with a flashlight, I drove back into the night. The streets were deserted ribbons unfurling beneath the streetlights. Each pulse of light matched the frantic rhythm in my chest. Parking in the same spot near the rusted fence, I found the station swallowed by darkness, save for the thin, watery light of a crescent moon filtering through shifting clouds. Shadows writhed and stretched. Slipping through the fence gap, the uneven ground threatened my footing. My flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, illuminating the familiar puddles and shattered glass. The stale, damp air filled my lungs. My own breathing sounded unnaturally loud. I nudged the heavy cargo door. It groaned open. The single light above the rocking chair still flickered, weaker now, casting long, distorted shadows. The chair sat precisely as I'd left it, facing the entrance, rocking with a slow, deliberate cadence, as if its occupant had just risen. I remained rooted to the spot, every muscle tensed. My flashlight swept the cavernous interior, probing the darkness behind crates, tracing the lines of silent machinery. The vast emptiness pressed in. Then, the beam caught them, a pile of envelopes nestled on the floor beside the rocking chair, all addressed to me. Silas Thorne. My name, repeated in that same unsteady script. A cold wave washed through me. Hesitantly, I moved closer, picked one up. The musty scent filled my nostrils. Inside? "We remember." My mouth turned to dust. Another. "We are connected." Cold sweat trickled down my spine. I raked the light across the room again, desperately searching for a hidden observer, a presence lurking just beyond sight. Nothing. The fine hairs on my arms prickled. My breathing grew shallow. I tore open several more envelopes, variations on a theme. Memories, connection, waiting. Confusion tangled with a profound sense of unease. Who were we? I stood there, suspended in time, perhaps minutes, perhaps longer, the silence broken only by the rhythmic creak of the empty chair. My throat tightened. "Who's there?" I whispered, the sound swallowed instantly by the vastness. No reply. A step backward, my hands trembling violently. A part of me screamed to flee. Yet another, stronger part, craved understanding. I waited, mind churning through impossible scenarios, elaborate hoax, vengeful acquaintance, random madness. Finally, the oppressive weight of the place, the feeling of being scrutinized by the building itself, became unbearable. I turned to leave. As my foot crossed the threshold, one final distinct creak emanated from the rocking chair. I didn't look back. I hurried through the darkness, the cargo door thudding shut behind me. sealing the mystery within. The night air outside felt sharp, clean, but offered no comfort. I scrambled back to the car, hyper-aware of every shadow, every rustle, expecting pursuit that never came. The drive home was executed with white-knuckled intensity, the steering wheel a lifeline. Back in the relative sanctuary of my apartment, another envelope lay waiting beneath the door. A wave of exhaustion and dread washed over me. Picking it up felt like accepting defeat, yet ignoring it was unthinkable. With trembling fingers, I opened it. This isn't over. My stomach plummeted. I stood motionless in the silent hallway, listening to the blood pounding in my ears, my skin tingling with a cold, electric fear. And that is where I remain, caught in this disquieting loop. The letters continue their silent, insistent arrival, summoning me back to that desolate place, promising shared recollections, hinting at reunion, yet offering no concrete answers. My nerves are frayed filaments. The identity of my correspondent, their motives, remain shrouded in unnerving ambiguity. The fear of losing my grip on reality gnaws at me. Yet the compulsion to engage, to follow this breadcrumb trail of decay and cryptic messages, persists. I know with chilling certainty that as long as the letters appear, the pull towards the station, towards the flickering light and the empty waiting chair, will remain. I don't know where this path leads, or what awaits me should I return again. I am utterly alone in this, the tension coiling ever tighter within me. There seems no way to break the cycle. Should I surrender to the summons or fight against the invisible tide? I cannot escape the unsettling truth. The more I resist, the stronger the urge becomes, hardening into a conviction that this entanglement, whatever its nature, is inescapable. My headlights scythed through the obsidian night, finding only an endless ribbon of vacant asphalt. The fuel gauge needle trembled near zero, a silent alarm mirroring the disquiet blooming within me. Then the sky wept, first fat, splattering drops, then a deluge, just as a stuttering neon ember flickered ahead, gas 24/7. Pulling into that desolate haven, I couldn't fathom it was the threshold to the longest, most harrowing night of my existence. Hours had bled together on the highway, the relentless drone of tires on wet road inducing a near-hypnotic state. This solo pilgrimage across the country, meant to cleanse the residue of a fractured love, had instead steeped me in a profound, suffocating solitude. By the time I coasted under the station's skeletal canopy, rain hammered down in blinding curtains. It was a grim outpost, the sort conjured in fever dreams, paint sloughing off in leprous patches, the sign gasping with half its lights extinguished. But desperation is a poor negotiator, and my car was starved for fuel. I swung the door open into a gust that nearly stole my footing, the ancient metal roof above offering scant refuge. Shivering, I cinched my jacket tighter, wrestling with the stiff gas nozzle. Above the station door, a small bell chimed discordantly. A figure emerged, older, perhaps 60-odd years, draped in shadow, with a beard like frayed rope and eyes, flinty chips that seemed to pierce the gloom and fix directly on me. He advanced with a dragging limp. "Evening," he rasped, a voice like grinding stones. "Foul night for travel." I manufactured a smile, nodding. "Yes, the storm caught me. Fortunate to find you open." He showed a line of stained teeth in a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, you're fortunate, no doubt. Not many souls wander this way, especially not delicate travelers like yourself." A sliver of ice, unrelated to the chilling rain, touched my spine. I pivoted back to the pump, willing him away with my silence. Futile. "Where you bound?" he inquired, sidling closer. The air thickened with the stench of stale tobacco and something else, rank and unsettlingly organic. "Just passing through," I offered vaguely, my gaze locked on the rising numbers. "Got a long way to go." He emitted a low chuckle, a sound that raised the hairs on my arms. "Long way, eh? Treacherous in this squall. Best come inside. Shelter from the storm a spell." My head shook, my voice striving for firmness. "Thank you, but I need to press on." The pump clicked off. Relief warred with urgency as I secured the nozzle. Turning towards my car, his hand shot out, a vice clamping onto my forearm. His grip, surprisingly potent for his age, dug into my flesh. "I insist," he breathed, the words low, freighted with menace. "Not safe out there. Come inside." My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to yank free. "Let go!" The command trembled despite my resolve. His grip intensified, pulling me inexorably toward the station's shadowed doorway. Now, he crooned, a venomously gentle tone. "No need for fuss. Just looking out for you." Panic erupted, raw and absolute. I tore my arm from his grasp, stumbling backward on the slick pavement. Instinct overriding reason, I didn't flee to my car, but plunged into the swallowing darkness flanking the station. Behind me, I heard his enraged shouts, snatched away by the wind's howl. Rain lashed my face as I ran, sightless, propelled only by the imperative to escape him. The ground beneath was a treacherous landscape of unseen hollows and grasping roots. Branches whipped my skin as I blundered deeper into what I now recognized as dense woods. Stopping was unthinkable. The memory of his touch, the predatory gleam in his eyes, these were my goads. Time dissolved in the storm and the blackness. I have no measure of how long I ran before my foot snagged, root or stone I couldn't tell, pitching me violently forward. Agony flared in my ankle as I hit the sodden earth, the impact expelling the air from my lungs. I lay momentarily stunned, gasping, the taste of mud and decaying leaves coating my tongue. The stark horror of my predicament settled. Lost, injured, adrift in an unknown forest during a tempest, hunted. Painfully, I hauled myself upright, leaning heavily against a tree trunk. My ankle protested, likely sprained, not broken. The downpour had subsided to a persistent drizzle, but thick clouds smothered any potential moonlight. A sharp crack, a twig breaking somewhere behind me. I froze, breath caught in my throat. Him? Had he pursued me into this arboreal maze? Or merely some nocturnal creature startled by my chaotic flight? I strained my ears against the frantic thrumming in my chest. There it was again, the measured tread of footsteps, slow, deliberate. "I know you're out here." His voice drifted through the trees, reigniting my terror. "No point hiding, little bird. These woods are my own backyard." A sob clawed its way up my throat. I bit it back, pressing myself into the rough bark, wishing I could merge with the wood. The footsteps drew nearer. Move. Hide. As silently as my throbbing ankle allowed, I began to edge away, concentrating fiercely on muffling my ragged breaths, terrified any sound would betray me. "Come on out now," he called again, the false concern in his tone more chilling than overt anger. "It ain't safe. Things out here besides me. Just want to help." I wanted to scream that he was the singular danger, the only predator I feared, but silence was my shield. I focused solely on movement, on placing distance between us. The forest was an endless, repeating pattern of indistinguishable trees cloaked in darkness. Hopelessly disoriented, Unsure if I was moving deeper or circling back, my only objective was survival, staying ahead, enduring until dawn or rescue. Stumbling through a small moonless clearing, my foot struck something metallic. Looking down, I saw the rusted jaws of an old animal trap, teeth still wickedly sharp beneath the patina of age. A profound coldness seeped into me. This wasn't untouched wilderness. It was a hunter's domain, and I was the quarry. His voice had faded, but I didn't dare believe I'd lost him. He was out there, patient, searching. Hours might have passed as I wandered, soaked through, shivering violently. My ankle pulsed with every agonizing step. Exhaustion pressed down like a physical weight, yet the primal urge to live propelled me onward. Then, as the eastern sky began to pale, bleeding gray into the black, a sound reached me. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. The low hum of traffic. A road, civilization, safety. Hope surged, lending strength to my failing limbs. I pushed forward, ignoring the pain, the fatigue. Trees thinned, glimpses of dark asphalt flickered through the leaves. Just as that fragile hope began to solidify, a hand clamped firmly onto my shoulder. A scream tore from my throat as I spun, bracing for the final confrontation. But the face before me wasn't Silas's. It belonged to a state trooper, his features etched with professional concern. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, his other hand already reaching for his radio. "We've had units searching all night." The adrenaline that had sustained me vanished in an instant. My legs buckled, and I crumpled to the damp earth, gut-wrenching sobs tearing through me. Between ragged gasps, I managed to recount the ordeal. The gas station, the leering attendant Silas, the desperate flight into the woods. The trooper's expression grew somber as he listened. "You're incredibly lucky," he said quietly. "We've had reports. A man matching that description. Several women have vanished from this stretch over the years." While the rising sun painted the clouds in bruised pinks and golds, I sat huddled in the back of an ambulance, swathed in a coarse blanket. Police cruisers swarmed the dilapidated gas station, but Silas was gone. Yellow tape fluttered, cordoning off the scene of my near demise. My mind struggled to encompass the night's events, the chilling proximity to becoming another face on a missing poster. As a detective approached, notebook open, I made a silent promise to myself. Never again would I dismiss intuition, that cold prickle of warning. Never mistake unease for simple paranoia. I had looked into the void and somehow stumbled back. The long drive still stretched before me, but its significance had faded. I was alive, whole. And I carried a story now, a cautionary tale whispered from the edge of darkness. As the ambulance pulled away, carrying me toward light and a future I had almost forfeited, I closed my eyes, offering a silent, fractured prayer. The nightmare had ended, but its shadow, its lesson, would remain. The sign, a skeletal promise of 24-hour gas and snacks, pulsed erratically against the immense Nevada dark, bathing the deserted tarmac in a wash of sickly neon light. Behind the counter, swallowed by the 2 a.m. stillness, I nursed the absurd hope someone might actually materialize from the void. My name is Leo, 23, ejected from the academic orbit, now charting constellations of dust motes on the graveyard shift at this outpost on the edge of nowhere. It wasn't ambition, just anchorage. It covered rent and offered sprawling, silent hours for the screenplay whispering in my head. This particular rotation began under familiar auspices. 10 p.m. saw me relieving Sal, the evening minder. Our ritual exchange, pronouncements on the profound lack of activity, his customary lament about the coffee machine's latest rebellion. Perfect, I mused. Another mechanical adversary to wrestle with through the long, slow hours. Time dripped. Coolers were restocked, their glass doors fogging under my touch. Floors were swabbed into gleaming submission. The coffee machine, a temperamental beast, yielded a grudging brew after much coaxing. Around one, the growl of a diesel announced temporary life. A trucker, weary lines etched around his eyes, seeking fuel and caffeine, muttering about the miles unspooling before him. I offered a sympathetic murmur, grateful for the transient proof of other heartbeats. Then, shortly past 2, the ordinary fractured. Engrossed in Kerouac's fevered prose, the dog-eared paperback a shield against the quiet, I registered a new sound, a discordant thrumming of engines. 3 vehicles slid into the pool of light, a dented old sedan, a van that looked like it hauled secrets rather than goods, and incongruously sleek beside them, a black SUV with tinted windows. 6 figures emerged, all male, a disparate assembly spanning decades, from rough-hewn types radiating barroom brawls to others whose sharp dress clashed with the predatory intensity in their gaze. They flowed into the store, and the air itself seemed to recoil, thickening, charged with the pre-storm tension that raises hairs on your neck. They didn't browse, they dispersed, occupying the space with an unnerving economy of movement. One drifted towards the door, another positioned himself beneath the impassive eye of the security camera. The eldest, tall with hair like salt scattered on pepper, approached the counter. A smile flickered across his lips but died before reaching his eyes. "Bathroom key?" A nod. I reached behind me, fingers closing around the cold plastic tag. Turning back, the strategic placement of the others slammed into my awareness. My pulse kicked into a frantic rhythm. "Here you go," I managed, striving for a steady tone as I extended the key. He accepted it but remained anchored to the spot. Leaning closer, his voice dropped, intimate and chilling. "Listen up, son. Here's the arrangement. Pop the till, give us the contents. Then you show us the safe. Cooperate, maybe you see sunrise." My thoughts scattered like dropped coins. Impossible. Not here. Not in this forgotten haven where a declined credit card constituted high drama. "Look," I heard myself stammer, voice thin. "There's hardly any cash. It's mostly plastic these days. Maybe just..." His hand lashed out, twisting in my shirt collar, yanking me forward until his stale breath ghosted my face. "This isn't a discussion," he snarled, the civility stripped away. "The register. Move." My hands betrayed me. Trembling so violently the keys rattled against the lock. As I scooped the meager bills into the canvas bag, one of his accomplices slapped onto the counter. My mind raced, scrabbling for an escape vector. The panic button beneath the counter felt miles away, an impossible reach under their collective scrutiny. "The safe," the leader commanded, his voice flat, impatient, once the drawer was bare. "Where?" My feet carried me towards the cramped back office, dread a cold knot in my stomach. The safe, a relic, operated on a time lock, stubbornly sealed until the morning shift arrived. Would this truth save me or condemn me? As I explained haltingly the mechanism's inflexibility, I saw fury flare in the leader's eyes. He pivoted, conferring with his men in clipped, urgent whispers. Fragments reached me. "Waste of time. Move to the next target." A fragile bubble of hope swelled within me. Perhaps they'd cut their losses, satisfied with the petty cash. Then, a phrase, slicing through the murmurs, turned my blood to ice. "Can't leave loose ends." reality warped, stretching time into slow-motion frames. I saw the leader's hand dip inside his jacket, for a weapon, surely. Instinct, raw and primal, surged. My eyes locked onto the fire extinguisher bolted to the wall. I lunged, tearing it from its bracket, thumb jamming down the trigger. The small office vanished in an acrid white cloud. Blindly, I swung the heavy cylinder, felt it connect with yielding flesh. A strangled cry of pain. No time to register who, only flight mattered. I exploded from the office, pursued by curses and enraged shouts. The store, once familiar territory, became a labyrinth. I navigated by instinct, fueled by terror, sending towers of chips and candy crashing in my wake, hoping to impede them. Reaching the front door, I found my exit barred by one of the men. Without conscious thought, I snatched a bottle of windshield washer fluid from a display, launching it with desperate force. It struck his head with a sickening crack. He crumpled. The cool kiss of the night air shocked my lungs as I burst into the lot. Footsteps pounded the asphalt behind me, closing the distance. I veered away from the light, plunging into the encompassing darkness of the desert beyond the station's glow, praying the vast emptiness would swallow me whole. My lungs burned, the frantic drumbeat of pursuit urging me onward. Directionless, propelled only by the need for distance, I ran. After an eternity compressed into minutes, I risked a backward glance. Nothing visible, only faint receding shouts carried on the night breeze. I pushed on, stumbling over unseen rocks and thorny scrub. The gas station now just a remote, malevolent shimmer on the horizon. As adrenaline's tide began to ebb, the starkness of my predicament crashed down. Alone, stranded miles from anywhere, hunted by dangerous men. Just as despair threatened to engulf me, twin beams sliced through the blackness. Headlights approaching on the highway. A surge of desperate hope propelled me towards the road, arms waving wildly. The car slowed, hesitated, then stopped. An older couple peered out, their faces etched with concern and late-night weariness. "Help!" I choked out, the words torn from my raw throat. "Please, they robbed the station. Men, they tried to kill me." Perhaps it was the sheer terror radiating from me, my torn clothes, the wildness in my eyes. They believed. A door opened, pulling me into the sanctuary of their car. The vehicle accelerated swiftly away as the woman's fingers flew across her cell phone, dialing 911. The ensuing hours dissolved into a haze of flashing lights, official questions, the sterile calm of a brief medical check. Back at the gas station, the police found the scene deserted, but littered with evidence confirming my frantic narrative. The robbers had vanished into the night. In the days that unwound, the initial shock subsided, replaced by the chilling replays, the persistent what-ifs, the visceral knowledge of how narrowly I'd skirted oblivion. Yet, beneath the fear, a strange current ran. Pride. I had stared into the abyss and scrambled back out. The gas station job was history, naturally, but the night had irrevocably altered my internal landscape. I returned to my studies, infused with a focus, a grit I hadn't possessed before. The screenplay still beckoned, but now the words carried a different weight, shaded by the memory of real peril, informed by the unexpected resilience unearthed within me. Sometimes, in the deepest quiet of the night, phantom footsteps echo, the adrenaline spike returns. But then I remember. I survived. I thought faster. I ran harder. I escaped. And if I could face them down with nothing but panic and a fire extinguisher, maybe finishing this degree, forging something real from the wreckage, wasn't so impossible after all.